The scent of incense mixed with something different that night. In the cells of Santa Chiara convent, between cold stone walls that should have guarded only prayers, gestures were being consumed that the church would have wanted to erase forever. The silence of the cloister hid secrets that no confessional could ever absolve. When we think of medieval convents, we imagine places of peace and devotion. Women consecrated to God, immersed in prayer, far from temptations. But what really happened behind those impenetrable walls? What was hidden in the infinite nights of the cloister when the church's control clashed with human nature, repressed to the breaking point? Official history speaks of monasteries as fortresses of purity. Chronicles describe devout nuns, perfect handmaidens of the Lord. But the documents the Inquisition tried to hide tell a completely different story. According to a report from the Florence State Archive dated 1624, authorities registered numerous cases as divine ecstasies. But the secret testimonies of nuns speak of something that had little to do with divinity. They spoke of bodies, repressed desires exploding in darkness, practices mixing devotion and carnality in inadmissible ways. Behind the image of the Bride of Christ hid a reality of living, pulsing, denied bodies. And when repression becomes absolute, human nature always finds a way out, even if it passes through the forbidden. Imagine being 15 years old. Your family delivers you to a convent you didn't choose. You're the youngest daughter, the one without sufficient dowry for marriage. Or you were offered to God as penance for your father's sins. From that moment, those walls become your world, forever. No more sun on skin, no embraces, no human contact not controlled. Your young living body must die to the world, must become pure spirit. But the body doesn't die so easily. The rules of the cloister were ferocious. In many orders, nuns couldn't even look in mirrors. They undressed in darkness to avoid seeing their own nudity. During bathing, they wore long shirts covering every inch. Touching one's own body required the abbess's permission. Flesh was enemy, pleasure was Satan. A Benedictine monk wrote in 1348, "The young sisters show signs of great nocturnal agitation. Many walk in their sleep, others scream, some hurt themselves, cutting their own flesh as if to drive away something burning inside. That thing burning had a name no one dared pronounce. It was desire. It was life claiming its right to exist." When candles went out, the convent changed face. Cells became theater of silent rebellion, not always conscious, but inevitable. Some nuns developed particular friendships. They were called Sisters of the Heart, a term the church tolerated because it seemed innocent. But behind that name lay bonds going beyond spiritual brotherhood. In some cells, 2 nuns slept together to warm themselves in winter, a practical custom. No one asked questions until someone started talking. The inquisitorial trial of Toledo, from 1492, speaks of this. Sister Maria de los Angeles was interrogated for weeks about her relationship with Sister Teresa. The acts are explicit, brutal. They describe gestures shared in darkness, caresses soothing loneliness, bodies seeking comfort in a world denying all tenderness. "I confess to having sought in her the warmth God denied me," said Sister Maria. "I never stopped praying, even while our bodies united. We sought God in each other. Was this our sin?" The inquisitor recorded with trembling hand. He ordered immediate separation. Sister Maria was transferred hundreds of kilometers away. Sister Teresa died a few months later. Chronicles say she let herself starve to death. Others whisper she took her own life. But they weren't the only ones. During inspections, authorities made discoveries never officially recorded. Objects hidden under straw mattresses. Wood or wax sculptures, shaped in forms recalling male body parts. Some crude, others surprisingly detailed. An anonymous letter from 1873 describes an inspection from 1456 at the Claris convent in Siena. "We found objects whose form leaves no doubt about their function. The sisters claim to use them to mortify the flesh, but confessions speak of different use. Some admitted seeking through these objects relief from the tension devouring them. The church didn't know how to handle these revelations. Admitting the brides of Christ used such objects would destroy the image of purity. So they opted for silence. Objects were destroyed. Nuns punished in secret. forced to extreme fasting or whipped. But the problem never disappeared, because absolute repression doesn't kill desire. It transforms it, deforms it, makes it grow in shadow. There was one acceptable way for a nun to experience bodily pleasure: mystical ecstasy. Saint Teresa of Avila describes it with words of a carnal lover. "I saw an angel piercing my heart with a golden lance. The pain was so great and so sweet that I moaned, wishing it would never end." The Church celebrated these experiences as signs of sanctity. But what really distinguished them from forbidden sensations? The boundary was thin, and many nuns learned to walk that line. During night prayers, some nuns entered trances that made them tremble, moan, writhe. They said they saw Christ, felt his touch, his love penetrating them. Male confessors observed with growing discomfort. A Dominican chronicler in 1512 noted with disturbance, "I witnessed Sister Catherine's prayer. Her body stiffened, then began moving in ways I cannot describe without shame. She screamed Jesus' name with a voice from another dimension. When she calmed, her face glowed with an expression I've seen only in lovers after carnal union." There was another dark side: confessors. Churchmen with unlimited access to nuns' souls and bodies. The confessional became a place of dangerous ambiguity. Nuns had to confess every impure thought, every physical sensation, every dream. They had to describe in detail what they felt, imagined, which body parts reacted. The confessor interrogated, investigated, all in the name of purification. But some went further. According to a Curia inquiry from 1587, at least 12 priest-confessors were removed for excesses in spiritual direction. Documents speak of inappropriate touches justified as exorcisms, obscene questions masked as spiritual guidance, requests for carnal favors in exchange for absolution. A serious case involved Father Giacomo, confessor in Venice. For years he convinced young nuns that the only way to combat carnal temptations was to satisfy them with him. "Sin with me is not sin," he said, "because I am Christ's intermediary." When the scandal exploded, 16 nuns were involved, some pregnant. The Church made Father Giacomo disappear. Nuns were locked in isolation forever, children given up for adoption or abandoned. The affair erased from records. Power had sanctified its own sin. Mortification of the flesh was common practice. Nuns flagellated themselves with rope whips, often with knots or metal tips. Blood on backs was offering to God. The more you suffered, the more you showed devotion. But here too, the boundary between spiritual and physical became blurred. Some nuns developed addiction to flagellation. Pain caused release of substances, creating intoxication. Consciousness alteration exchangeable for religious ecstasy. The physician Girolamo Mercuriale wrote in 1587, "I examined nuns who practice daily flagellation. Their bodies show extreme violence, but what disturbs me is their facial expression. There's something resembling desire more than devotion. Some confess awaiting the moment eagerly, thinking about it during the day." In some convents, flagellations were collective. Nuns gathered, stripped to the waist and struck in turns. The sound of whips, moans, blood on the floor, while reciting prayers and singing psalms. Was it punishment or something else? In 1619, in Pescia, in Tuscany, one of the most documented scandals occurred. The protagonist was Benedetta Carlini, a young nun with divine visions. She became a bess, venerated for her apparent sanctity. But behind her cell doors, something different was consumed. An investigation revealed Benedetta had a carnal relationship with another nun, Bartolomea. But the most disturbing thing was the justification. She said that during intimate unions, she was no longer herself. She was possessed by Splenditello, a male angel who descended from heaven and used her body to love Bartolomea. "It's not me touching her," she explained to inquisitors. "It's him, the angel. I'm only the intermediary. I feel his body inside mine, his masculine force passing through me. It's not sin because it's divine." Bartolomea confirmed during separate interrogations. She described their nights, how Benedetta kissed and caressed her, how she spoke with different voice, deeper, calling her my bride, how she penetrated her with fingers, claiming they were the angel's fingers. The Inquisition didn't know how to judge. Was it madness, possession, deception? Finally, Benedetta was condemned and locked in isolation for 35 years until death. But the case raised questions. How many others had found similar ways to negotiate with desire? How many had transformed the language of faith into language of body? The most scandalous problem was pregnancies inside convents. Pregnancies impossible in absolute cloister, yet they happened. Records document nuns who gave birth in secret. Official explanations spoke of diabolical miracles, demonic nightmares. The blame was always the demons, never the men who had access. But the truth was simpler and crueler. The confessors, doctors, priests, gardeners, suppliers, all had contact opportunities and some systematically abused. A chronicle from 1623 describes the case of Santa Caterina in Palermo. 3 nuns became pregnant. Investigation revealed the gardener had a key to a secondary door. He entered at night. Nuns who consented did so from loneliness, desire, curiosity. Those who didn't consent were threatened or forced. When pregnancies became evident, the church acted brutally. The gardener secretly executed. Nuns transferred. Children registered as orphans. Reputation saved. Truth buried. What makes this story dark is not so much what happened, but how systematically it was hidden. The church had developed an architecture of silence. Disappeared documents, transferred witnesses, culprits dead in mysterious circumstances, victims forced to false confessions. Every scandal managed internally, no civil authority involved. What emerges is a picture of immense suffering. Women locked against will, bodies repressed to breaking point, desires transformed into guilt. Human nature's denied a name of impossible ideal. The church preached the body was temple of the spirit, but treated these temples as prisons, walled them alive, starved them of contact, warmth, life, then scandalized when life found ways to manifest. Those nuns weren't saints or sinners, they were simply human. Trapped in a system demanding the impossible, stop being alive while continuing to breathe. Many went mad. Documents speak of obsessive behaviors, hallucinating visions, severe self-harm. Others got mysteriously ill. Psychosomatic disorders, manifestations of unbearable psychic pain. Some found in forbidden love with other nuns a way to survive. It wasn't perversion. It was desperation transformed into tenderness. The only way to remember being alive. Centuries have passed. Extreme cloister convents almost disappeared. But the lesson remains current. Whenever power claims to totally control body and sexuality, conditions for abuse are created. Whenever human nature is denied instead of integrated, that nature manifests anyway, but in distorted, violent forms. Convent secrets speak of an obsession with purity transforming into its opposite. The attempt to create spaces pure from carnal sin produced places where that sin proliferated in darker forms, lived in shame, guilt. And when abuses were discovered, power didn't seek justice. It only sought to hide, protect its image, maintain control through silence. The stories told are real. Documents exist, buried in archives few consult. Those women's voices reach us through centuries, filtered through their judges' words. But if you listen carefully, you can still hear their pain. They were daughters, sacrificed for family convenience. They were living bodies, treated as dead flesh. They were souls, seeking God, and finding only walls. Some sought love in another woman's arms, because it was the only love permitted. Others lost themselves in ecstasies, confusing the divine with the carnal. Others became victims of men using power to satisfy desires. All were judged. Few were understood. The Church has apologized for many past horrors. But of these women, these denied bodies, little is said. Perhaps because the question of control over female bodies remains too uncomfortable, too current. Are we sure these horrors belong only to the past? Or perhaps power in every era always finds a way to sanctify its own sin while condemning others? How many women, even today, live in invisible prisons, forced to deny fundamental parts of themselves in name of impossible ideals imposed by others? Medieval convent walls have fallen, but other walls, less visible, continue to exist. And behind those walls, Silences are consumed that no one dares break. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe. Share with those who love history. Thank you for listening. See you next time.